It's absolutely impossible to give a high five and not be excited or have a positive exchange between the two people.
The high five. That classic display of emotion when words just aren't enough. Now, if we agree that high fives are an indication of enthusiasm, try and imagine what we have on our hands today.
Give me a high five. He gave a high five, and a high five's the high five. I held it till about 2 years ago. I held the Guinness World Record with 9,325. Okay, it's super simple. Just slap your hand.
MTNmeister is supported by Champion Sport Extreme, CSX. They've taken over 30 years of experience in manufacturing medical compression and used that to create a new line of products for active individuals such as yourself. Their compression socks are loaded with features, including a self-adjusting top band to prevent slippage, a seamless toe box to reduce friction, Achilles protection, arch support, graduated compression, calf cradle. I could go on for 50% off of everything at csxchampion.com. Type in the code Meister at checkout. Oh, and while you're on the internet, maybe consider leaving us a review on iTunes. Just go to our podcast, click on Ratings and Review, and click Write a Review. Thanks. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of MTNmeister. Today with us, we have Roy Tuscany, who is the founder of High Fives Foundation, which works to provide grants and recovery options to injured athletes from the action sports world. To date, they have helped raise funds, secure treatments, and aid recovery in 67 athletes. Do I have that number right, Roy?
Actually, we just gave out some more money and some new grants in the last months. We're actually up to 70 athletes now from 19 states.
70 athletes from 19 states, founded in 2009, but in 2006, Roy was aspiring to be a professional skier himself, but became paralyzed from the waist down after overshooting a jump. In less than 2 years after the accident, Roy was back on skis. Roy Tuscany, welcome to MTNmeister.
Oh, Ben, thank you so much for having me. I got to do this interview from my favorite ski shop in the world, Vermont North here in Warren, Vermont. So just really immersing myself in the ski community while doing this podcast.
It sounds like you guys are having a lot of fun out there.
Yeah, they're tuning skis and, wrapping up the day. I think someone just dropped off a 12-pack for a tune or something like that.
Well, depending on when our listeners are tuning in, maybe they'll join you for one. Roy, thanks for joining us. You are a Vermonter. Is that how you say it? Vermonter? Somebody from Vermont?
Yeah, I think so. I'm a fifth generation Vermonter.
Wow, that goes all the way back to the founding of America?
A little bit after, actually.
A little after, right. And I went to school in New Hampshire, and a person from New Hampshire is called a New Hampshireite. That's why I didn't know what a Vermonter was actually called.
I'm pretty sure it's Vermonter. It sounds right. It has the hard R in there.
Right. But you have this pride, which is so characteristic of East Coasters. However, you live in Tahoe right now, and you seem very proud of living in Tahoe. So I'm just like, what's going on here, Roy?
Oh, I mean, if you actually go to Lake Tahoe, you'll realize that 90% of the town is actually made up Vermonters or UVMers. So it's pretty much like it's like a little secret Vermont out west. And so I've been there since 2004. It's a great place. We're finally getting snow again. We've had 4 years of pretty harsh winters, and things are starting to turn the corner. And hopefully we'll start having a winter like Vermont is having this year.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Although Tahoe did just get some snow, I thought I saw, right?
Yeah, we just got 16 inches and then another 9 inches today. So we're starting to climb again, which is good.
Starting to catch up to Boston this year.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if anybody can catch Boston.
Yeah, no, trust me, it is. There's a lot of snow out here. So let's go back. Let's talk about you a little bit. In 2006, you were aspiring to be a professional skier, correct?
Yep.
And you had this tragic accident, which essentially stopped that journey of becoming a professional skier. Can you tell us kind of what kind of skier you were, and then what happened on that day?
Yeah, so in 2006, things were starting to go really right for me, and out in Tahoe, was doing a bunch of photo shoots, video shoots, and in contests, and having a blast. And then the last day of the season, went down to Mammoth Mountain. I had been there 2 weeks prior, and I hit this step-up jump that was just so lofty and so much fun. And for some reason, I don't know, I was always into safety, and for some reason that day I decided not to speed check this jump, and I ended up going 130 feet on a 100-foot step-up. Mm-hmm. So overshooting and coming down straight in the air, and the resulting crash into the snow burst fractured my T12 vertebrae right into my spine.
So I don't do anything too crazy on skis, but occasionally I'll venture over to the terrain park. And I know it's really scary to overshoot a jump because of the flat landing. In your case, it was a step up and a 100-foot long jump. How high did you fall from?
I came down from 30 feet in the air and came right down in literally what felt like a truly uphill landing, but it was just so flat, and there was no way to take the compression.
And what happens after that? I mean, do you remember anything?
Oh, yeah. Instantly, I kind of went into this weird state. And then the next thing I remember is this air mask coming onto my face and just this rush of oxygen and this rebirth almost. And I woke to a whole bunch of people standing around me and me being like, wow, I don't know what's going on, and not being able to feel my feet or move them. And unfortunately, the radiologist at the hospital I was originally brought to, he was like, you're never going to walk again. And, at that time, you're not really sure who you're talking to, who these people are, who's the expert in the field, as, I was not at all a part of this in my life before. And it turned out the radiologist, kind of overstepped his boundaries. And, later the doctor at Renown who actually did the surgery, a neurosurgeon whose great-great-grandfather was Nathaniel Chittenden, the first governor of Vermont, which is a pretty ironic tie-in right there. So Dr. David Lepple, he told me, he's like, whatever you put into your recovery, you'll get in return.
Wow.
And I took that as, okay, I'm going to work 110% and try to get 110% return back from my recovery.
Did he mean that literally? I guess what I mean by that is, if you put in hard work, ideally you receive some sort of internal reward from that hard work. But did he literally mean that through your recovery, by putting in hard work, you would in fact recover? I can't really speak on it other than I think he said that because he knew that I had a hardworking background. Us New Englander people kind of have that instilled in him. And I think he kind of put that in front of me as a challenge almost. Because I remember when I went back and saw him 3 months later, he was, blown away that I walked into his office with crutches, and he was like, this was my guy. I can't believe you're walking in here. And it was just, I think he knew that being from the East Coast, he knew that I had that hardworking mentality and that kind of never give up, drive. And because of that, I think he kind of told me that, and I took it wholeheartedly. That's really cool. How do you recover from this? Just lots of physical therapy?
Yeah, lots of physical therapy, trying a lot of things that, potentially might not always be, as seen as the status quo.
What?
Acupuncture, massage, neurokinetic massage, Pilates, this bar effect, yoga, just literally trying everything possible from personal training to physical therapy to pool therapy to then all these different types of modalities of healing and trying to see where those would lead me to in my recovery.
Wow, so many things going on. How did you receive all of this? And also, is this the beginning of High Fives Foundation?
So I was super lucky. I was coaching for a ski academy at the time called Sugar Bowl, which is on top of Donner Summit in Truckee, California. And then I was from this great area in Vermont, the Mad River Valley. And those two areas got together and rallied and raised $85,000 for me over a 2-year time period. And that money was all kind of stored underneath the Sugar Bowl Academy nonprofit. They set up an umbrella account called Roy's Recovery Fund. And that recovery fund and in the ways that was set up is sort of the basis or the start to High Fives Foundation. Mm-hmm. It was all invoice based. So if I ever wanted to use any money, I had to present an invoice and then, they would pay that invoice directly. So all the money could be tracked and followed. And it was never like, they're like, here, Roy, here's $5,000. Like, go use how you want it. And we've used the same concept with the foundation. You know, any athlete that gets grant funding from us, we provide them with a budget, and then that budget is followed up directly from the foundation to the vendor that's providing it. And then that way, you know, all the money's trackable, and there's never a question of how funds are used. And you can always report back to your donors too, you know, saying, hey, you know, X amount of money was used in this way for this person's recovery. And it's, you know, been a really successful, you know, platform that we've used to make sure that, you know, no one ever questions the way that funds are used.
Mm-hmm. So the name is fun, High Fives Foundation. How did it get its name?
So the name of the foundation came from interacting with doctors during my recovery. And a lot of doctors are just, they're so, you know, they're directly into this concept of, you know, always looking at a medical chart, and they're not really always looking at the patient. And so for me, it was saying, you know, like, hey, like, I'm going to break the ice. And I remember the first time I did it to Dr. Lepa, I was like, give me a high five. He looked at me and I was like, hey, it's super simple. Just slap hands. We're not, you know, rebuilding someone's back right now like you did for me. We're just slapping hands and exchanging stoke, because it's absolutely impossible to give a high five and not be excited or have a positive, you know, exchange between the two people.
That's exactly what it is. It's an emotional exchange. One that can't be exchanged through words. Have you ever looked up the origins of a high five?
You know, I have. And, you know, there's a couple different stories. There's one that that they say the Louisville basketball team in like 1973 invented it during a March Madness game. That's one. Then there's also from the Los Angeles Dodgers in the 1976 baseball playoffs. Dusty Baker came out. No, Don Baylor. Or was it Dusty Baker?
You're right, Dusty Baker. I've just found all this stuff through Wikipedia. You obviously have it memorized.
so Dusty Baker came out, and Glenn Burke had just hit a home run, and they exchanged and gave a high five. And those are kind of the two known, I guess you could say, original existence of the high five.
This is all really good stuff. There's an ESPN 30 for 30 short. If our listeners aren't familiar with 30 for 30, ESPN does these segments on pretty cool topics in sports. So there was one on the high five, and I'll put that on your Meister profile page, Roy.
Awesome.
I want to talk a little bit more about some of the other things I found on the high five Wikipedia article, though. The high five originated from the low five, which has been part of the African American culture since at least World War II. And it also says Magic Johnson once suggested that he invented the high five at Michigan State. I don't think that's true, because the Dusty Baker and Glenn Burke story that you told us earlier, Roy, came before that.
Yeah, and then there's the Louisville basketball team,
right,
which came before that.
Yeah.
I don't believe Magic did it.
Yeah,
I don't think he did it.
Also, a reporter who covered that game, that Dodgers game, this is what he wrote. It was a wild, triumphant moment and a good omen as the Dodgers headed to the playoffs. Glenn Burke, waiting on deck, thrust his hand enthusiastically over his head to greet his friend at the plate. Baker, not knowing what to do, smacked it. Baker said, his hand was up in the air and he was arching way back. So I reached up and hit his hand. It seemed like the thing to do.
Wow, they made that sound almost like an erotic novel.
It was so enthusiastic. But if you think about it, like when you give somebody a high five, that's, you know, it's just like a display of emotion.
It really, truly is. Actually, I am, I'll let a little cat out of the bag. I'm actually going for the world record again for the most high fives in a 24-hour period. I held it till about 2 years ago. I held the Guinness World Record with 9,325, but I was unfortunately beat by a gentleman in Australia. And we're working on a promotion with NASCAR and Joey Logano and Talladega Motor Speedway to re-break the world record and bring it back to the United States.
Oh my God, this is great. Okay, so the world record right now is what, 9,300 somewhere?
No, it's like 15,000 and like 504, I think, or something like that.
All right, do you know what that is? Like how that breaks down per second or per minute? We can do the math right now.
Yeah, I mean it's a good amount. The guy was smart. He did it at a marathon, and there was a bottleneck in the course, and he just stood there. And there was like 20,000 people running in a marathon, so everyone kind of had to high five him.
Does it have to be a different person high fiving you each time?
Yes, it does. And you have to keep your arm up the whole time during it, which makes it quite challenging.
So if he does 15,300 high fives in a day,
yeah,
we'll say he's awake for 16 of those hours just for fun. So he's giving 956 high fives an hour, which comes out to 15 high fives a minute. So he's giving one high five every 4 seconds. Yeah.
He's doing well. He's doing really well.
I have faith. We'll have to watch. You'll have to keep us updated on this, Roy.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be a task. Because when I broke it before, we went to this event that they said was going to have X number of people coming to it, and they were off by about 9,000. And so we ended up going to a football game, then walking the streets of San Francisco. I think I went high-fiving for about 20 hours, and it was an absolute almost disaster that turned successful in the very end.
And you're like predicting my notes. I had a question on here that said, how many high fives do you give in a day? So good work there.
So one day I gave 9,325.
That's awesome. Great. Final thing on that Wikipedia article, a medical study. I'm not sure why they did this medical study, but it found that fist bumps and high fives spread fewer germs than handshakes, just in case you were wondering.
I actually just saw that the other day, that it's better to high five than handshake.
Right, which is good for your foundation, right?
It's very good. Yeah. We didn't call it the Handshake Foundation.
So when you have a boardroom meeting, do you guys high five or handshake or both?
I definitely think we high five way more than we handshake. Okay. Whenever we meet with athletes, we definitely give out high fives way more than we shake hands.
Cool. Good stuff. The High Fives Foundation, living up to your name. More MTNmeister coming up soon. But first, let's thank a sponsor. MTNmeister is supported by the DeLorme InReach Explorer, the world's only satellite communicator with built-in navigation. With the InReach Explorer, you can send and receive messages, plan routes, drop waypoints, and share your journey from anywhere in the world. But its other features are what makes the InReach not only a navigation device, but a survival kit too. During emergency situations, you can trigger an SOS and interact with DeLorme's 24/7 search and rescue monitoring center. For $35 off of your purchase of the InReach Explorer, visit inreachdelorme.com and type in the code Meister at checkout. As always, you can find this deal and all others on our website. Thanks. Back to the show. So, Roy, we've had other athletes on the show who have encountered injury or adversity, and all of them have said that it has changed their outlook, although many of them have different answers. So I guess how has this changed you? How has this changed your outlook?
So, I think the big thing is you don't really grasp how great things are until you lose something. And someone with a blown knee injury is going to think about, the time that they lost from having a blown knee. And someone like myself who suffered an injury that's a much longer, doesn't really have a recovery plan like a blown knee. We kind of look at things in a different view to better understand how great we did have it and how we still can, do things, but it might be in a different way. It might, as you could say, be in an adaptive way, as in a way that you're trying to figure out a different course, a path, or a different action on how to complete it. And I think that's the big thing is a lot of people, they just don't always understand the loss that they have until they lose something.
Yeah. I was listening to a TED Talk from a lady named Ash Beckham, and she was talking about something difficult that happened in her life. And she said, hard is not relative, hard is just hard. And I guess what she means by that is we shouldn't be trying to judge each other's challenges or compare challenges. Just hard is hard. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great way to put it. Hard is just hard. For me, walking up a set of stairs is hard, and someone else might find it, something to me, like doing math, something that comes natural to me, but to other people, that's hard to them. And so it's kind of all relative to, the challenges that you put in front of you and how you view them as being hard, and understanding that they're hard for a reason. Mm-hmm. And it's because if everything was easy in life, there would be no challenges. And I hate to say it, as so many people would love that there was no, hardship in life. But in all honesty, without hardship, it's really hard to truly understand those blissful moments that energize you or release adrenaline through your brain that, sparks new interest or just sparks excitement. And if you don't have the downs, then I think it's harder to have the ups, because if you're constantly having ups, how would you recognize, the good times?
Mm-hmm. You are so enthusiastic, but there are other people who aren't. Why do you think you're so positive and enthusiastic?
I've just understood that, I had something in my life happen to me, and I could have taken two roads, and I decided to open the door that led to, not self-pity, but to, better the world through philanthropic efforts through the foundation, through surrounding myself with good people and trying to figure out ways to make, advancements so I can stay within the sports that I love.
Roy, we like to get a gear recommendation from the guests that we are so fortunate to have on this show. Give our listeners something that they have to have.
I'd say something that people have to have is a GoPro Silver 4. They're mind-blowingly amazing. They allow you to capture your day. You can capture things that, 5 years ago you could never capture with any type of device. And you're able to just, relive moments in a perspective that you've never been able to see before. And I think that's the really cool thing about them is, yeah, they've got great marketing. Yeah, they've got cool athletes. They've got cool branding, all those things. But what you can actually capture with them is it's just unreal. And you get to relive something in a view or in a moment that, you would have never been able to capture outside of just, taking the old mental picture.
What's the weirdest thing that you've captured on a GoPro, or what's the most interesting way that you've used one?
I think the cool thing that I've done with them is because I ski with outriggers, so I have ski poles that have skis on the end of them. Mm-hmm. We've been able to put the GoPros on the tips of those outriggers and capture just some really cool moments of carving into the hill that, I don't think you can really get unless you have a cameraman holding one there. And
very neat.
Yeah, so for me, and then the cool part is I always have, as dumb as this sounds, I always have a selfie stick for the chairlift. You can put the GoPro out on the outrigger, right, hold it out there, and then get all your buddies on the chairlift, regardless if you're on a 3-pack, a 4-pack, or a 6-pack chair.
Wow, you have it measured. What about a gondola?
The gondola, you can just kind of hold it and take
it. Very good. The GoPro Silver 4 on Roy's Meister profile page on our website, MTNmeister.com. Roy, we have one more question for you. You are today's Mountain Meister. Congratulations on that. But we want to get a recommendation for the next Mountain Meister. We want to hear who you want to hear on this show.
So I would say I'd want to hear my longtime favorite skier, who I still think is probably the best skier I ever have seen ski. I was just skiing with him the last couple of days. He was super famous in the 80s. He was super famous in the 90s. He's still super famous in my mind. But John Egan is who I would like to see to be the next Mountain Meister.
John Egan. Keep an eye out for him on a future episode of Mountain Meister. Keep an ear out, actually, not an eye out. Roy Tuscany, wonderful having you on Mountain Meister today. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, Ben, thank you so much for having me.
For the listeners, you can find out more at highfivesfoundation.org or go to Roy's Meister profile page on our website, MTNmeister.com. We at Mountain Meister know that getting away from it all is great, as long as you make it back. With the DeLorme InReach Explorer's tracking functions and its ability to trigger an interactive SOS in an emergency, you'll be in good hands in any journey. For $35 off of your purchase, visit InReachDeLorme.com and use the code Meister at checkout. Thanks for supporting one of our supporters, and thank you for listening to this episode of Mountain Meister with Roy Tuscany. For the Colorado listeners out there, I will be spring skiing in Aspen over the next few days from April 2nd to April 5th. If any of you are out there, shoot me an email, ben@MTNmeister.com, and we can try to get some turns together. That'd be fun. Enjoy doing the rest of whatever you do when you listen to this podcast. I'm Ben Shank, and you've been listening to Mountain